What if I told you that the modern world, with its helicopters, armored tanks, scuba gear, and humanoid robots, was actually envisioned over 500 years ago by a man who didn't even have a formal education? A man who wrote backwards to hide his secrets, who dug up graves in the dead of night to understand the human machine, and who, almost as an afterthought, painted the most famous portrait in human history. We use the word genius far too easily today, but history offers only one true, undisputed master of everything. This is the story of a mind so profound, so deeply observant, and so far ahead of its time that many have wondered if he was even of this world. This is the story of the most talented man who ever lived, Leonardo da Vinci. Born on April 15, 1452 in the small Tuscan hill town of Vinci, Leonardo started life with a significant disadvantage. He was illegitimate, the son of a wealthy legal notary and a peasant woman. Because of the strict social rules of the time, this meant he was barred from the prestigious professions. He could not become a doctor, a lawyer, or a notary like his father. He was also denied a formal education in Latin and mathematics, the languages of the scholars. But this apparent curse was, in fact, the greatest gift history could have given him. Untethered from the rigid, dogmatic thinking of universities, Leonardo was forced to learn from the greatest teacher of all, nature. As a boy exploring the hills of Tuscany, Leonardo developed an insatiable curiosity. He didn't just look at a bird, he studied the mechanics of its wings, the flow of the wind through its feathers, and the precise angles of its flight. He didn't just watch a river, he analyzed the chaotic spirals of the water currents. He realized early on that everything in the universe was connected. To him, the branching of human veins mirrored the branching of a river delta, and the curls of human hair behaved just like the swirling eddies of a whirlpool. Recognizing his son's raw artistic talent, his father secured him an apprenticeship in Florence with Andrea del Verrocchio, one of the most prominent artists of the day. Florence was the beating heart of the Renaissance, a city alive with new ideas, wealthy patrons, and fierce competition. In Verrocchio's bustling workshop, Leonardo learned not just painting, but metallurgy, chemistry, mechanics, and carpentry. The legend goes that when a young Leonardo painted an angel in one of Verrocchio's works, the master was so struck by the breathtaking beauty and lifelike quality of the boy's painting that he threw down his brush and vowed never to paint again. The student had not just surpassed the master, he had completely redefined what art could be. But Florence, for all its beauty, was a city obsessed with philosophy and the classical past. Leonardo was a man obsessed with the future and the physical mechanics of the present. At the age of 30, seeking new horizons and perhaps running from the immense pressure of his uncompleted commissions in Florence, he moved to Milan. He sent a bold letter to the ruler of Milan, Ludovico Sforza, pitching his services. In this letter, he didn't boast about his ability to paint beautiful portraits. Instead, he presented himself as a ruthless military engineer. He promised designs for impenetrable bridges, mortars that would rain terror on enemies, armored chariots that were the direct ancestors of the modern tank, and even covered boats that could sink enemy ships from below. At the very end of the letter, almost as a footnote, he mentioned that he could also paint and sculpt as well as any other man. It was in Milan that Leonardo's true genius exploded onto the pages of his notebooks. He began recording his thoughts, observations, and inventions in thousands of pages of loose manuscripts. To keep his ideas private, or perhaps simply because he was a left-handed dyslexic, he wrote entirely in mirror script, from right to left, legible only when held up to a glass. These notebooks are the greatest testament to human curiosity ever created. Within their pages, we find designs for flying machines inspired by the anatomy of bats, the first known diagram of a parachute, a prototype for a diving suit, and a mechanical knight that could sit up, wave its arms, and move its head, essentially the world's first humanoid robot. But to invent, Leonardo knew he had to understand how the ultimate machine worked, the human body. His pursuit of anatomical truth was obsessive and dark. In the freezing cellars of hospitals, illuminated only by the flickering light of a candle, Leonardo dissected over 30 human corpses. He peeled back the skin of the dead to uncover the secrets of the living. He was the first to accurately draw the human spine, the first to detail the complex system of tendons in the hand, and the first to discover how the valves of the human heart actually functioned. His anatomical drawings were so precise and accurate that modern medical professionals still marvel at them today. He didn't just want to paint a human being. He wanted to understand the engineering of life itself. While in Milan, he was commissioned to paint what would become one of the most famous works of Western art, The Last Supper. Painted on the wall of the dining hall of the convent of Santa Maria delle Grazie, it was a revolution in storytelling. Before Leonardo, artists painted the Last Supper as a static, peaceful moment. Leonardo chose to capture the exact, explosive second after Jesus says, "One of you will betray me." The painting is a masterpiece of psychological drama. You can hear the gasp of the apostles, see their shock, their denial, and their anger. Through his mastery of geometry, all the perspective lines in the room converge exactly on the right eye of Jesus, drawing the viewer into the calm center of the storm. However, Leonardo's experimental nature was also his downfall. Instead of using traditional fresco techniques which required painting quickly on wet plaster, he wanted to take his time to perfect every shadow. He invented a new mixture of oil and tempera on dry plaster. It was a disaster. The painting began to flake off the wall within his own lifetime, leaving us today with only a ghost of its original brilliance. When the French invaded Milan in 1499, Leonardo was forced to flee. He wandered Italy, working briefly as a military architect for the ruthless and cunning Cesare Borgia, traveling alongside a young diplomat named Niccolò Machiavelli. He mapped out entire cities from a bird's-eye view with stunning satellite-like accuracy, centuries before human flight was possible. Eventually, he returned to Florence, where he would begin working on a portrait of the wife of a wealthy silk merchant. This painting was the Mona Lisa. For Leonardo, it was never just a portrait. It was the culmination of everything he had learned about science, anatomy, optics, and nature. He worked on it for over a decade, refusing to give it to the merchant who commissioned it, carrying the small wooden panel with him wherever he went. He used a technique he perfected called sfumato, Italian for vanished in smoke. He applied dozens of microscopic layers of translucent glaze, blurring the lines around her eyes and mouth so that they seem to change as you look at them. If you look at her eyes, her smile seems to widen in your peripheral vision. But when you look directly at her mouth, the smile vanishes. It is an optical illusion created by a master who understood the anatomy of the human eye better than anyone else alive. The background, too, is a testament to his worldview, a prehistoric landscape of swirling rivers and jagged mountains, connecting the mystery of the woman to the wild, untamed forces of nature. In his later years, Leonardo found himself eclipsed in Italy by younger, faster rivals like Michelangelo and Raphael, men who were driven by ambition and ego. Leonardo was driven only by curiosity, which meant he left behind a trail of unfinished masterpieces, easily distracted by a new geometric puzzle or the flight of a sparrow. Seeking peace, he accepted an invitation from the young King Francis I of France. The king gave him a chateau, a generous pension, and the absolute freedom to simply think. The king loved Leonardo so much that he would visit him constantly, just to listen to the old master talk about philosophy, science, and art. In the spring of 1519, in the quiet countryside of France, the most brilliant light of the Renaissance began to fade. It is said that on his deathbed, Leonardo wept, apologizing to God and to humanity for leaving so much undone, for not practicing his art as he should have. He died on May 2nd at the age of 67. Legend claims he died in the arms of the French king. He left behind fewer than 20 completed paintings, but he also left behind thousands of pages of notes that, had they been published in his time, would have accelerated human scientific progress by centuries. He was a man who lived with one foot in the 15th century and the other in the 20th. Leonardo da Vinci wasn't just a painter or an engineer or a scientist. He was the ultimate observer. He showed us that science and art are not two different things but two sides of the exact same coin, both driven by a deep, powerful desire to understand the beauty of the world around us. And as long as humans look up at the sky and wonder how to fly, or look at a river and marvel at its flow, the spirit of the most talented man who ever lived will remain with us.